The sun of the colony world was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Farmers were returning from the fields, soldiers were finishing their patrols, and life seemed quiet. But the silence broke when the sky tore open with fire. Small Imperial shuttle roared down, leaving a trail of smoke behind it. People stopped whatever they were doing and turned their eyes to the heavens. The shuttle was marked with the black crest of the Galactic Empire. That symbol meant only one thing: trouble. The humans of the colony gathered near the landing pad. Whispers spread quickly. "Why are they here?" someone muttered. "Another tax? More soldiers?" Another said, "Maybe a new governor." Mark stood near the front of the crowd. He was tall, broad-shouldered, a man used to working the hard soil of the colony. His jaw tightened as the shuttle touched down. He had seen the Empire's cruelty before, and he knew nothing good ever came from their visits. The shuttle hissed as its ramp lowered. The colonists expected a towering alien general or a squad of armored troops. Instead, footsteps echoed sharp, deliberate, but small dot, and then she appeared. A tiny figure stepped out, barely 3 feet tall. She had silver-white hair that glimmered in the sunlight, sharp violet eyes that glowed with authority, and a crown-like device on her head. She wore a black Imperial uniform far too elegant for her size, lined with gold. Her boots clicked against the metal ramp as if she was marching into battle. The humans stared, stunned. Some even laughed nervously. This is it? That's our new overseer? She's a child." But one look into her glowing eyes silenced the laughter. The little alien girl's presence was heavier than any general's. She stopped at the bottom of the ramp, lifted her chin, and spoke in a voice cold as steel. "I am Commander Lyra of the Galactic Empire. From this moment, this colony and every human in it belongs to me." Gasps spread through the crowd. Some scoffed, others looked away in fear. But Mark didn't move. He folded his arms across his chest and stared right at her. The girl's eyes locked on him. For a moment, the world seemed to freeze. "You," she said, pointing at him. Her voice was soft but carried the weight of command. "Step forward." Mark's friends whispered urgently. "Don't do it, Mark. She's dangerous. Look at her eyes." But Mark stepped forward anyway. His boots crunched against the dirt as he stopped only a few feet away from her. Up close, she looked even smaller, almost delicate, but her confidence was terrifying. "You think you can own us?" Mark asked, his voice low but steady. The girl tilted her head. A tiny smile curved her lips. "I don't think human, I know. By decree of the Empire, you are mine. This colony is mine. And you," her eyes glowed brighter, "you belong to me now." The crowd murmured in shock. Mark clenched his fists. He wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it. Owned? By someone barely reaching his waist? But something in her tone sent a chill down his spine. She wasn't joking. One soldier behind her lifted a strange weapon, long, sleek, deadly. At once, the colonists fell silent. The message was clear. This wasn't a game. Mark stared at the weapon, then back at the tiny commander. Her smile widened, as if she enjoyed his hesitation. "You have 2 choices, human," she said. "Kneel, or be punished." The silence dragged. The wind whistled across the landing pad. Mark's knees trembled, but not from fear. He was holding himself back. He wouldn't kneel, not to her, not to anyone. But before he could speak, she raised her hand. A faint humming filled the air, and suddenly Mark felt pressure on his chest like invisible hands pushing him down. He staggered, fighting against it. The crowd gasped as he struggled to stay upright. Her violet eyes burned brighter. "You resist me? Interesting. I like strong ones." Mark's teeth ground together. With a growl, he forced himself to stay standing. Sweat ran down his temple, but he refused to bend. Finally, the pressure stopped. The girl's expression shifted from amusement to something deeper, curiosity. She lowered her hand slowly. "Good," she whispered. "Very good." Mark's chest heaved as he caught his breath. His whole body ached, but he had not kneeled. Commander Lyra's smile returned, sharper than before. "From this day, human, you are mine, and I will enjoy breaking you." The crowd was silent. No one dared speak. No one dared move. Mark's eyes burned with defiance, but inside he felt the weight of something far worse than death. The Empire hadn't sent soldiers. They hadn't sent a governor. They had sent her, and somehow that was far more terrifying. The next morning, the colony square was filled with tension. People gathered nervously, whispering to each other while the imperial banners fluttered in the dusty wind. At the center stood the small figure of Commander Lyra. Her uniform was spotless, her silver hair catching the sunlight like fire, and her violet eyes sweeping over the humans like a hawk watching prey. She was tiny, yes, but no one dared laugh now. Yesterday had taught them that size meant nothing. Mark stood in the crowd, his arms crossed. His back still ached from the invisible force she had used on him. He hated her smug little smile, but he hated even more the way everyone around him lowered their heads in fear. Lyra raised a small metallic device in her hand. With a sharp click, it projected a glowing hologram into the air. Imperial orders written in the strange, twisting script of her people. She spoke clearly, her voice echoing across the square. "By decree of the Galactic Empire, this colony is now under direct command of the Imperial Crown. All humans present are subjects of the Empire. You will provide food, labor, and loyalty. In return, you will be tolerated." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Subjects? Slaves? Fear rippled like a wave, then her eyes locked on Mark again. Her lips curved into a dangerous smile. "And as for you, human, the Empire has assigned you a special role." Mark frowned. "What role?" Her voice cut like a blade. "You are my property now, officially registered under my command." The crowd gasped. Some covered their mouths, others stepped back as though afraid to be near him. Mark's fists clenched, his jaw tightening. He could barely believe what he was hearing. "You expect me to accept that?" Mark growled. Lyra tilted her head, studying him like a scientist examining a rare specimen. "You already did. Yesterday, when you resisted, you proved something. You are stronger than the others. Defiant. That makes you useful." Mark's heart pounded. Useful? For what? The girl stepped closer, so small that she had to tilt her head far back to meet his eyes. But her presence felt crushing, as if the air itself bent around her will. "You will attend me at all times," she ordered. "You will guard me, obey me, and serve me. When I speak, you listen. When I command, you act. You are mine to use as I wish." The words were delivered with the cold certainty of law. The Empire had decided, and she was the instrument of that decision. Mark wanted to shout, to strike her down, to end this humiliation. But one glance at the soldiers behind her, their weapons glowing with deadly energy, reminded him what defiance would cost. Not just his life, but the lives of everyone in the colony. Still, he refused to bow. He leaned down slightly, his voice a low growl. "You may think you own me, little tyrant. But humans don't break so easily." For the first time, Lyra's smile faltered. Her violet eyes narrowed, and for a heartbeat, she looked less like a commander and more like a child denied her toy. But then her smirk returned. "Good," she whispered. "I don't want you broken. Not yet. I want to see how far you can bend before you finally snap." With a wave of her hand, she dismissed the crowd. Soldiers forced people back to their homes, leaving the square empty except for her and Mark. Lyra's eyes gleamed as she looked up at him. "Come with me, human. From this moment forward, you walk only where I walk. You sleep only where I sleep." Mark's blood ran cold. He wasn't just her prisoner. He was her possession. And he knew, deep inside, that this was only the beginning of his nightmare. Mark had thought the worst part was over when the Empire declared him property. He was wrong. From that moment on, Commander Lyra shadowed his every step. Wherever he went, whether to the fields, the barracks, or even his own quarters, she was there, her small boots tapping against the floor, her violet eyes watching him like a predator watching prey. The strangest part was the contrast. To the colony, she was terrifying, a ruthless commander who barked orders and punished anyone who hesitated. But when she was alone with Mark, she acted different, mischievous, playful, dangerous in another way. "Why do you walk so fast?" she snapped one morning, struggling to keep pace with his long strides. "Slow down, your legs are too long." Mark glanced down at her. "Or maybe you're just too short." Her eyes narrowed, and for a second he thought she might blast him across the square. Instead, she smirked. "Careful, human. Every insult you throw at me, I can return tenfold. Do you want me to prove it?" Her words sounded like a joke, but the soldiers nearby stiffened. They had seen her proof before swift punishment that left men doubled over in pain. Mark bit his tongue. He didn't want to give her the satisfaction, but he also refused to bow. The tension between them grew heavier every day, like two storms colliding. Fear in the colony life in the colony changed overnight. Food was rationed, work hours doubled, and patrols marched through the streets at all hours. The colonists whispered behind closed doors, "She's a demon in a child's body. She enjoys it, doesn't she? The way she controls us." Mark should have fought her. He should have killed her. Mark heard those whispers, but he couldn't act. Not yet. Every time he looked at the glowing barrels of the soldiers' weapons, he knew open rebellion meant death. Still, anger burned inside him like fire. Her dangerous curiosity at night, Lyra forced Mark to remain near her. She dismissed her guards and allowed no one else inside her quarters. It was unsettling. The chambers were far too grand for her tiny frame walls lined with imperial banners, shelves stacked with alien tech, and a massive chair that looked like a throne. She climbed onto it with effort, then sat back proudly as if it were built for her alone. "Do you like it, human?" she asked, her tone teasing. "You sit on dirt, I sit on thrones. That is the difference between us." Mark glared at her. "The only difference is that you hide behind soldiers and laws. Strip that away, and you're nothing but a spoiled child." Her smile froze. For a moment he thought he'd gone too far. Her small hand twitched, the air around him humming with the same invisible force she had used before. His chest tightened. But then she stopped. Instead of punishing him, she leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with strange amusement. "You're the first one to ever speak to me like that," she whispered. "Everyone else kneels. Everyone else trembles, but you refuse." Mark stayed silent, but his silence was answer enough. The Trouble Grows days turned into weeks, and Lyra's presence infected every corner of the colony. Farmers worked under her watch. Children lowered their voices when she passed, and even the bravest soldiers avoided her gaze. But the real trouble was Mark. Everywhere he went, she dragged him with her. She forced him to stand behind her during speeches, to sit beside her during meals, even to walk with her through the market. To the colonists, it looked like he was her chosen favorite. Whispers spread quickly. "He's helping her. He betrayed us. She owns him now." The suspicion in their eyes cut deeper than any weapon. Mark had always been a leader, a protector. Now he was seen as the tyrant's pet, and Lyra seemed to enjoy it. "See how they look at you?" she said one evening, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "They hate you now more than they hate me. That's how I know you belong to me." Mark clenched his fists, his anger barely contained. But deep inside, a chilling thought grew. She was right. Every step he took beside her, every order he didn't resist, drove a wedge between him and his people, and that was the true danger. She didn't need chains to bind him. She was turning his own people against him. As the night fell over the colony, Mark stared at the stars above, his jaw tight. Trouble followed her everywhere, yes, but now, because of her, trouble followed him too. And he knew this was only the beginning. The colony slept under a pale moon, but Mark was not allowed to rest in his own bed anymore. Every night, the guards escorted him through the long metallic corridors of the Imperial outpost until they reached her chambers, a place that now felt more like a trap than a room. The doors opened with a hiss, and he stepped inside. The private quarters of Commander Lyra were nothing like the colony's stone houses. The walls shimmered with dark metal, glowing veins of blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. Alien artifacts floated in glass cases, humming softly. At the far end stood a tall, throne-like chair, far too big for her tiny frame. She was already sitting there, legs crossed, boots dangling inches above the floor. She looked like a child playing pretend, but her eyes burned with the arrogance of an empress. "Good," she said, her voice soft but commanding. "You came." Mark's jaw tightened. "Did I have a choice?" Lyra tilted her head, her silver hair falling over one glowing eye. A mischievous smile touched her lips. "Everyone has a choice. Yours is simple. Obey me, or watch your people suffer." Mark said nothing. He hated the way she spoke, so calm, so confident, as if she truly believed she owned him. Games of power instead of barking orders like she did in public. Here she was different. She dismissed the guards with a flick of her hand, leaving only the two of them inside. Her whole demeanor shifted, less commander, more playful. She leaned forward in her throne, chin resting on her tiny fist. "Tell me, human, why do you never kneel?" Mark stood stiffly, arms crossed. "Because I'm not yours. No matter what the Empire says." Her smile widened, sharp as a blade. "You are mine. Even when you deny it, especially when you deny it." The air grew heavy, the invisible pressure returning. Mark's chest tightened, his knees trembled, but he forced himself to stay standing. Sweat rolled down his temple, yet he didn't bow. Lyra's laugh echoed softly, almost musical, stubborn. "I like that." She released the pressure, and Mark staggered but didn't fall. She clapped her small hands once, amused. "You see? This is why I keep you near. You entertain me." The mask slips. Hours passed in strange silence. Lyra made Mark sit across from her, watching him as though he were a puzzle she couldn't solve. At one point, she rose from her throne and walked toward him, her small boots tapping lightly. Standing barely at his waist, she circled him slowly, her violet eyes glimmering. "You're not like the others," she whispered. "They tremble, they kneel. But you fight, even when you cannot win. Tell me, why?" Mark met her gaze without flinching. "Because freedom is worth more than life." For the first time, her expression faltered. Her eyes flickered, as though his words had struck a hidden nerve. She looked away quickly, pretending to study the glowing symbols on the wall. "You speak like a fool," she muttered. But her voice lacked the sharp edge it usually carried. For a moment, she seemed almost human. A dangerous confession. When she returned to her throne, she leaned back and stared at the ceiling. "Do you know why the Empire sent me here?" she asked suddenly, Mark's brow furrowed. "To control us." She shook her head. "Not just that. They sent me because I am different, small, easy to underestimate. They want me to prove myself, to crush anyone who doubts me." Her voice dropped lower, almost to a whisper. "If I fail, they will erase me." Mark blinked, startled. For the first time, he saw not the tyrant, not the commander, but a frightened child hidden beneath layers of arrogance. But then, just as quickly, the mask returned. She sat upright again, her smirk snapping back into place. "Of course I won't fail. Not as long as I have you." She pointed at him with one tiny finger, her voice regaining its command. "You will stay with me. Guard me, serve me. Sleep outside my door if you must. The Empire may own this colony, but I own you." The uneasy Bond Mark clenched his fists. Every word she spoke was poison, yet something in her trembling mask lingered in his mind. Was she really just a spoiled tyrant? Or was she another? Prisoner of the Empire like him, only trapped in a different way? As he left her quarters that night, the question burned inside him. He wanted to hate her, but now he wasn't sure if hatred was enough. And deep down, he feared something worse, that in her eyes he wasn't just a prisoner, he was becoming her only friend. The colony believed Commander Lyra's arrival was only about control taxes, soldiers, fear. But Mark was starting to see signs of something else. Something hidden. It began with small details. Lyra would spend hours alone, sealed in her quarters, speaking to no one. The glow of alien devices lit up the windows at night, and strange signals crackled on the comms tower whenever she was inside. She dismissed even her own guards during these times, allowing only Mark to stand watch nearby, one night unable to ignore his curiosity. Mark pressed his ear against the door. He heard her whispering in a language that wasn't hers, the words sharp and hurried. It wasn't an imperial accent. It sounded older, secretive, almost forbidden. And then he heard his own name. Mark stepped back, his heart pounding. Why was she speaking about him in a hidden tongue? The hidden files. The next day, while Lyra was inspecting the food stores, Mark noticed her console still glowing inside the chamber. Against his better judgment, he slipped inside and looked at the screen. Symbols he couldn't understand filled the display, but one line repeated over and over. Flashing red, subject, human male, resistance evaluation. Mark froze. Subject, evaluation? His stomach turned cold as he scrolled further. The reports were detailed records of every time he defied her, every word he had spoken, every sign of resistance. It wasn't just about ruling the colony. He was being studied. The console beeped, and Mark jumped back as Lyra entered. She tilted her head, her small eyes narrowing. For a tense moment, neither spoke. Then she walked past him, closed the console, and said in a calm voice, "You should be more careful, human. Curiosity kills faster than any weapon." The truth between them that night, Mark confronted her. "You're not here to rule us, are you? You're here for me." Lyra's violet eyes flickered, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she climbed onto her oversized throne and stared at him with a strange smile. "Very good, human. You're smarter than I expected." Mark's fists clenched. "So what is it? Am I your prisoner or your experiment?" Her voice was soft, almost proud. "Both. The Empire doesn't just want to control humans. They want to know how you resist, why you refuse to kneel even when crushed. They sent me here to test you, to measure you." Mark's stomach turned. He wasn't just fighting for his freedom, he was part of a larger trap. "And what happens," he asked slowly, "when your test is finished?" Lyra's smile faltered. Her eyes shifted away. "Then, the Empire decides your fate, and the fate of every human in Kotus, this colony." Her dangerous confession. For the first time, her mask cracked more openly. She looked smaller than ever, sitting on that massive chair. "Do you think I wanted this?" she whispered. "Do you think I enjoy being their tool? They control me as much as they control you. If I fail, I will be erased. Just like you." Mark stared at her. He wanted to hate her, but hearing those words stirred something else, pity, or maybe understanding. She wasn't just a tyrant. She was a prisoner wearing a crown. But before he could speak, her smile snapped back into place. She leaned forward, her eyes gleaming once more. "Still, don't forget, human. Whatever the Empire commands, I command too. And right now, I command you to stay at my side." The shadow of the Empire that night. Mark lay awake outside her door, staring at the ceiling. His mind was racing. If Lyra was telling the truth, then his defiance wasn't just survival, it was data. Every act of resistance was being fed back to the Empire. He was no longer fighting only for his pride. He was fighting against an invisible machine that was learning from him, and worse. Lyra wasn't just the enemy anymore. She was caught in the same trap, but could he trust her? Or was that just another layer of the Empire's test? The question burned in his mind as the stars wheeled above the colony. Asterisk days passed, and the weight of the Empire's secret mission pressed heavily on Mark. He had learned the truth. He wasn't just her prisoner, he was her test. Every act of defiance, every refusal to kneel, was being recorded and sent back to her masters. But something else began to change too. Lyra herself, the same girl who once stood on the landing pad, demanding obedience with a voice of steel, now seemed distracted. Her violet eyes no longer burned with the same cold fire. At times, Mark caught her staring into the distance, her tiny hands trembling when she thought no one was watching. The night of the storm one evening, a violent storm rolled across the colony. Winds howled through the streets, lightning split the skies, and the power flickered across the outpost. Mark stood at his usual post outside her door when he heard a sound he never expected, a sob. He froze. For a long moment, he wondered if he had imagined it. But then it came again, faint, muffled, unmistakable. Against his better judgment, he opened the door and stepped inside. Lyra was curled up on the throne, her tiny frame shaking. Her crown-like device lay discarded on the floor, and tears glistened on her pale cheeks. When she saw him, she quickly wiped her eyes, her voice sharp with forced authority. "You were not invited in, human." But the command sounded hollow. Her words cracked under the weight of her own fear. A different face. Mark didn't move. He studied her carefully, seeing for the first time not the tyrant, not the commander, but a frightened girl carrying the weight of an empire on her shoulders. "Even tyrants cry, huh?" he said softly. Her head snapped up, eyes blazing with embarrassment. "Silence," she barked. But her trembling lips betrayed her. Mark stepped closer, his voice calm. "You act like you're in control of everything, but you're not. You're just as trapped as we are." For once, she didn't argue. She just stared at him, her small fists clenched, her whole body trembling. Then, in a voice so quiet it was almost lost to the storm, she whispered, "They'll kill me if I fail." The words struck him harder than any weapon. The hidden burden. Lyra stood slowly, her silver hair sticking to her damp cheeks. "You think I enjoy this? You think I like owning you?" Her voice shook with rage and sorrow tangled together. "The Empire doesn't care about me. I'm nothing to them but a tool. Small, replaceable, disposable." Mark's chest tightened. He wanted to hate her, but the more she spoke, the harder it became. "Then why obey them?" he asked. Her laugh was bitter, sharp. "Because I have no choice. Disobedience means death. And I don't want to disappear." For the first time, she looked up at him not as a commander, not as a tyrant, but as something else entirely, a child begging not to be forgotten. An uneasy understanding. Mark sighed, running a hand through his hair. "So we're both prisoners. The only difference is your chains shine a little brighter than mine." Her eyes widened at his words. Then, slowly, a faint smile tugged at her lips, not cruel this time, but sad. "You see through me, human. No one has ever dared do that." The storm outside raged louder, rattling the walls. Lyra looked small and fragile against the flashes of lightning. For the first time, Mark felt something unexpected. Pity. But he also felt danger. Because the cracks in her armor didn't make her weaker. They made her unpredictable. The shift between them, before dismissing him. She stepped close, so close that he could see the tears still clinging to her lashes. She tilted her head up, her violet eyes locking onto his. "Do not mistake my weakness for surrender," she whispered. "Even if I break, human, I will not let go of you." Mark's heart pounded. He didn't know if it was a threat, a confession, or something far more dangerous. As he returned to his post, one truth burned. In his mind, the tiny tyrant was no longer uncheckable, and that made her more dangerous than ever. The colony woke under a blood-red dawn. The sky trembled with the roar of massive engines as an Imperial warship descended. Its shadow swallowing the land. Mark stood in the square, his jaw tight. Around him, colonists huddled in silence, fear thick in the air. Above them, Commander Lyra stood proudly at the front, her small frame dwarfed by the soldiers and banners surrounding her. Today was no ordinary inspection. Today, the Empire had come to judge her. The arrival the warship's ramp slammed down, and from it marched towering figures in black armor, their helmets marked with the seal of the crown. At their center strode a high overseer, his voice booming. Across the square, "Commander Lyra," he declared, "you were sent here to prove yourself. Show us that this human colony bends to your will. Show us that this subject," his gaze fell on Mark, "is broken." Mark's heart hammered in his chest. The trap was clear. If Lyra failed to prove control over him, both of them would be erased. The performance. Lyra stepped forward, her chin raised high. Her voice rang out, calm and steady. "This colony is mine. And this human," she pointed at Mark, "is my property." Gasps spread through the crowd. Soldiers turned their weapons toward him. Mark's fists clenched. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to shout, to tell the Empire he would never belong to them. But then he saw it, Lyra's eyes. Behind her smirk, they trembled, begging him silently. If he refused now, she would die. And so would the colony. For the first time, Mark realized the truth. She wasn't asking for obedience. She was asking for trust. The choice. The overseer's voice thundered again. "Then prove it, Commander. Make the human kneel." The entire colony held its breath. Soldiers raised their weapons. The storm of silence pressed down on Mark like chains. Lyra's tiny hand lifted toward him, glowing with that same invisible force. The air thickened, crushing against his chest, pushing him downward. His knees buckled, but instead of fighting, Mark made a choice. Slowly, deliberately, he lowered himself onto one knee before her, not broken, not defeated, but choosing to kneel for her, not for the Empire. The overseer smirked. "Good, the test is complete." The soldiers lowered their weapons. The warship engines rumbled, preparing to depart. The twist when the overseer finally turned away, Lyra's power eased. Mark rose back to his feet, towering over her. He expected her to smirk, to gloat, to remind him he belonged to her, but instead, she whispered so softly only he could hear, "You saved me, human, but don't forget, if I must own you." She looked up, her violet eyes shimmering with something between command and longing. "Then maybe you own me too." Mark froze. For the first time, he didn't know who truly held power. The cliffhanger the warship lifted into the sky, but the shadow it left behind still covered the colony. Mark stood beside Lyra, the colonists staring at them in stunned silence. He was their prisoner. He was her property. He was also her shield, and deep down, he couldn't escape the question burning inside him. Was she his captor, or had she just made herself his?